Yeah, everybody, welcome to the 21st SGS Podcast, which we dive deep into crossroads of sustainability and digital transformation. In our previous two episodes, we spoke about by large, um, is there a climate emergency? We dive into understanding its challenges and its opportunities, and what are the blockers and why these changes are taking time for better sustainability goals and make the world a better place. And then on the second episode, we spoke about um, 21st century is a science-led leadership, and we dive into more and more details of obstacles and blockers holding the climate response and climate emergencies. But today, I'm quite pleased to announce that we are coming to understand that these emergencies now needs to look at in a way how we're going to solve it. So we have distinguished guest Dr. Ravi Fernando is trying to further elaborate the opportunities that we have in hand. So we're going to start the topic with current board leadership models, which is more towards how we get the new leadership to start thinking more dramatically, change their mindsets once again, and see what things that they can achieve, not just on a sustainability perspective, but starting with a very economic angle and how that economic angle can lead businesses to become much more financially sustainable, at the same time how they can become environmentally sustainable. So welcome back, Dr. Ravi. Quite excited to have you once again. Could you please explain the 21st century board leadership model, which is something which you are quite keen to understand with you? Over to you, Doctor.
Thanks, Deshanan. We have, as you very rightly pointed out, understood the challenges and the issues and the crisis we are facing or the climate emergency. And now we are moving into what is this 21st century board leadership model and what is it made out of? So firstly, I must give you a little background, Dishana, as to how this model came about. During the COVID period, I was able to read one of the most important books I've read in recent times. The name of the book is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And this was written by Yuval Noah Harari, the Oxford historian. And as I started reading the 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, I began to realize that here was a leadership guideline for people in whatever part of the business they are in to address the 21st century challenges. And the more I studied it, the more I was able to see a very, very concise and strategic approach to the 21st century leadership. And what I really did was to look at the 21 lessons and create a model with six modules to cover it. So let me start by first explaining why we need a 21st century leadership model. A majority of the boards in the world are populated by leaders who have experience in finance and legal matters. And unfortunately, they were not exposed to the climate emergency or some of the new emerging subjects that are out there. So this model is an attempt to help all these leaders catch up and be completely relevant in the 21st century. Right. So with that, that's how the model was made. And let me now go into explaining the model itself. So in terms of the model, I have really broken the model into two parts. One part titled The Emergencies. And the reason I have done that is because the word emergency should trigger off an urgent action on the part of the board. Not a let's take it easy attitude, but a urgent action to respond to the emergencies. So there are three emergencies which need urgent action, and there are three disruptors which need strategic action at a board level. And my basic recommendation to any board is embed the 21st century board leadership model in your board agenda. And if you do that, you will comprehensively cover all the challenges that you're going to be faced with. So let me start with the three emergencies. The three emergencies that I have outlined here start obviously with the climate emergency. And by this time, board leaders should be able to answer the basic question of what is the climate emergency, what causes the climate emergency, and what should our company do in response to the climate emergency. And the first module basically outlines a strategic approach to fighting the climate emergency from within by initially understanding what are the carbon emissions of that company. Because until and unless we have the carbon emissions very well mapped out, there is no strategy we can induce or introduce to fight to reduce those carbon emissions. So we do a very good deep dive in the climate emergency module to understand the emergency of the climate emergency and respond to it by an aggressive reduction of carbon emissions and greenhouse gases that company is responsible for. And once we do that, we are able to be proactively and positively impacting the climate emergency as a company. The climate emergency is the reason and the key factor that lends itself to creating the other two emergencies that I have discussed. The second emergency, the climate emergency leads to, is the economic emergency. You know, sometimes we tend to look at everything in isolation, but this model is about looking at the connectivity of every one of these things. If the climate emergency impacts a company or a country or a nation, that will immediately set back its GDP and its economic growth and its economic development. So there is a indirect link of the climate emergency to the economic emergency, which is the second model in our 21st century board leadership model. And in the economic emergency, what we are really looking at is businesses revisiting their business models. Now, what do I mean by business models? In terms of business models, you can either have a sustainable economic business model or an unsustainable economic business model. The economic business model that is sustainable will ensure that we cater to the simple definition of sustainability, which is have an economic growth model that does not harm the environment and but contributes to social progress. So the second model that we talk about in the 21st century model, board leadership model, is the economic emergency and getting it right. So to get it right, we need to go into detail as to how the company is structured and how the company achieves its top line growth, and to ensure that you're not in any way harming the environment and that you're a steward of the environment as you drive the top line growth. The third model that we talk about in the three emergencies is what we call the health and social emergency. Now, when we talk about health and social emergency, you do remember that how the COVID-19 impacted the whole world and brought the world to a standstill. Global supply chains were all immobilized. Now, besides the fact that we always have a pandemic that could come in once again into the world and be proactively ready for it the next time, there are many health emergencies businesses contributing to without understanding and impacting them. So let me give you three areas that companies impact. Number one, most companies will impact air pollution because the major source of energy and electricity for most companies is tapping onto a grid which is generally running through coal and fossil fuels. So that means you are indirectly contributing to the air pollution of the country or the nation you're in. The second area that a company contributes negatively in health and social issues is the whole area of plastic pollution, single-use plastic pollution. Now, today we are living in a world where there is the great Pacific Ocean plastic patch, which is virtually turning into an island of plastic. And country after country is basically spewing out brand after brand single-use plastics into the oceans. And they say that at the rate of plastic pollution that we are going with, in the coming 3 to 5 years, we'll have more plastic in the ocean than there are fish. And the other issue is, as plastic takes a long time to biodegrade, sometimes 50 to 100 years, the microplastics end up getting swallowed by the fish. And when we eat fish, we end up then ingesting single-use plastic pellets or microplastics into our gut. And this is a major health issue that companies are contributing to without their knowledge. The third area that companies contribute to the health and social issues is by deforesting. Now, a lot of people tend to think that deforestation is an isolated issue. It is not. So there are two impacts when we have deforestation. The first impact is we are directly impacting the rain cycle of a nation, because the rain cycle needs the forest cover. And if we keep impacting the rainforest, cutting down forest cover, that nation's rain cycle is going to be affected dramatically. And when we talk about the Middle East having 5 to 6 days of rain a year, it is not as if the Middle East did not have forest cover when you go back in time and go back in history. In fact, when you read the history books, you hear of the cedars of Lebanon. Now, what happened really in the Middle East is that the Egyptians basically were very interested, a seafaring nation, and basically deforested to create ocean liners for themselves. But the bottom line is, majority of the nations in the Middle East have a forest cover which is under 3 to 5% of their land. So forest cover also delivers clean oxygen. The trees basically absorb toxins, but if you deforest, then you're not going to be able to do that. So these are three health emergencies that companies are responsible for without even their knowledge. So in our first three modules in the model, we have the climate emergency, we have the economic emergency, which is about creating a sustainable business model, and the third one is investigating what are the health emergencies that a company is contributing to, and to completely eliminate that. Now, the second term there is social emergency. When we talk about social emergency, we are talking of the inequality and disparity of income and livelihoods amongst the difference between the top 2 to 3% of the world's population and the rest of the world's population. And the bottom line is the top 1% of the world's population basically have access to 52% of the world's resources. And the bottom 99% has then the 48%. So one of the things that I advocate in the social emergency part is that companies look at their employees as the first point of call and lift up their employees and support their employees to live a sustainable life and a sustainable, give them a sustainable livelihood. If every company does that with all its employees, then I think we have a sustainable business model appearing. So those are the three emergencies, Dishana. Before I get into the disruptors, are there any questions that have come to your mind in terms of the emergencies?
Thank you for that elaboration, Dr. I believe so. 75% of our global forest is under threat in the sense we have lost, and 60% of the Earth's species have eroded in the last 2 decades. I think it's a significant impact. Some of these impacts are not visible to us. I would say it's not threatening enough, so people are still taking things for granted. But as you know, the climate is changing, and some parts of the world is already starts to receive some of those impacts, but it's still not impact enough for them to really think this is an urgency. That's the biggest issue. Um, but I believe that at some point all these things have a correlation to it, because it's a cycle of things which interconnected, interlinked. And if you break one significant part of it, it might not be so visible to the common mind. But if you really go in deep and zoom out, you can start to see some of these impacts, how it can be resonates into the every part of the function of the planet, and well as everybody who's living in it.
Correct.
Thank you for that explanation, Doctor. I think it definitely has a correlations to everything, because it's everything works together.
Absolutely.
And also, I would like to add something to this, because even if you look at the UN Sustainability Development Goals, which is there are 17 sustainability goals, it's the way I see it, it's not just, oh, we have to do all these things. No, I see innovation in it, because all these things which has been proposed and suggested on a science-led approach is giving you the opportunity to think differently, think innovation. How can we do things better? When you do things better, that means you're bringing better efficiencies. Better efficiencies means you're reducing costs. Reducing costs in the sense is the consumers are getting products and services at a lower cost. It reduces your inflation, and at the same time, companies are much more profitable. And then the great news is it's environmentally also feasible and encouraging. So we need to think things in a very different angle. That's why the mindset and the 21st century leadership is all about, which you
Correct.
just elaborated. So we just jump into the next one,
Emergency.
Doctor.
The
Oh, yeah, the
disrupt.
emergency. So if you can look at what are the, in a quick note, what are the responsibility of the government, and what are those urgencies that they need to bring in,
Yeah.
and also simultaneously businesses, and it granulates to family and individual level, because
Yeah.
everything needs to start at that level, because we cannot always put accountability for governments and businesses. Even individuals have a big role to play. So
Correct.
if you can just articulate how it needs to start.
Yeah. The addition, I need to just complete the model by first the defining the three disruptors, because we
Sure.
completed the three emergencies, Dishana. Now I need to go into explaining the three disruptors very quickly. Now, the difference between a disruptor and an emergency is disruptors need strategic decisions to handle them. So the first disruptor in our board leadership model is technology disruption. And I think as you are an expert in technology and in AI especially, we know that today a majority of the companies in Europe have embraced technology and have chief AI officers, whereas the rest of the world is lagging behind in terms of embracing technology. And one of the reasons we have a model on the technology disruption is that the board, any board, should be looking at what technologies might disrupt our business in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term, and embrace those technologies and embed those technologies in the company. And being a board that is tech savvy is very important. I'm not saying that every board director has to be a technology genius, but they have to know what is happening in the technology space that can impact their business. So today there are so many new technologies, from amazingly developed solar technologies. There's technologies on uh, AI driven grids that have come into play. Then we have water desalination technologies, precision agriculture technologies. And in technology disruption, we cover a whole gamut of these technologies so that company leaders can select which one they need to upgrade their business. The second one is in geopolitical disruption. Now, a majority of the courses in terms of MBA programs have yet not really brought geopolitics into the equation. And geopolitics is going to play a significant role in the future of any business, because geopolitics is today becoming a extremely vital cog in our strategic approach to business. So, what is the biggest change that we are seeing in geopolitical terms? The number one change we are seeing is the emergence of the BRICS organization, which are basically Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they have virtually created a Southern Hemisphere organization that basically is almost a competitor to the Northern Hemisphere organizations, which are like the US and the European Union. And the BRICS organization, until last month, expanded its membership from just 5 countries. And now it's already having a membership list of about 16 countries. And as at today, I can say that the BRICS economic influence has overtaken that of the US and European Union. So, understanding the emergence of BRICS and navigating the whole BRICS organization and its impacts is going to be a key element in geopolitical management. The last element on the model is the governance disruption. And governance disruptions are where companies make decisions where they put the term profit before planet or profit before people. So let me give an example of profit before planet. Now, at one of the episodes we did earlier, we've said that the world needs about 6.3 to 6.9 trillion dollars per annum to invest to create a green economy and to leverage the whole renewable side for the world by 2030 every year. Right now, most nations are subsidizing fossil fuels to the tune of 7 trillion US dollars per annum. And there goes the money that could have been spent on doing the right thing. We are reducing the fossil fuel costs and thereby increasing the chances of the climate emergency. So one of the roles of the governance model is to ensure that businesses review and start putting planet and people before profit in their decision making, and to ensure they're achieving the governance model. I want to go very quickly into the three solutions. The first one is, so what should governments do urgently? I would say the priority for every government on the planet is to reduce fossil fuel use and increase renewable energy use. That is goal number 7, which is move to renewable energy sources. And the reason I say that is, if a nation does everything else but does not reduce the use of fossil fuels, the planet will get warmer and warmer, and the economic devastation will increase dramatically. So the first priority for any government is to move into renewables and to get to the 80% renewable target by 2030. I would say this is the first and most important target. And once they do that, they must also then move into getting into the whole electrification of public transportation and develop infrastructure to achieve that. And there is yet a massive need to come to develop the green hydrogen side for the air transport and shipping. So these are the three focuses that I think governments should pursue. Businesses should basically also move into 100% renewable energy from using fossil fuels, and also look at moving to at least 70 to 80% of their logistics in transportation, land, shipping, and air transportation to start moving into the renewable sources, which are now becoming developed. And also look at making sure their supply chains are totally sustainable supply chains and not unsustainable supply chains. So, those are the three focuses for a business. Lastly, what should households do urgently? The same goal that I talked about that the governments should mobilize, which is goal number 7, moving into 80% renewable energy. I think every household should do the same to seriously embrace renewable energy for their homes with rooftop solar or whatever renewable source that is available in that country. Because if every household persists and with using grid energy, which is generally supplied by coal power and diesel fuels, then we have a serious crisis. So that is what every household should do, and also look at using renewable and electric vehicle transportation for their transportation, and give up using petrol and diesel vehicles, because anyway the European Union and places have already started looking at 2035 as the cutoff point for diesel and petrol vehicles. And the other one a household should be focused on is stopping the use of single-use plastics. So this is just a snapshot of the board leadership module. In summary, there are 3 emergencies: the climate emergency, the economic emergency, and the health and social emergency, which need urgent responses from the companies, governments, and people. And the next 3 emergers are the 3 disruptors, where we look at technology disruption, geopolitical disruption, and governance disruption. And this framework is what I strongly advocate every board to have embedded in their strategy, and to ensure that these are board agenda items as we move into solving the 21st century challenges.
Thank you for that elaboration, Doctor. I think solution, funding, and execution is the key. Based on what you just spoke, most organizations, governments, and individuals need that support with a proper guidance.
Correct.
If you don't give the proper guidance, sometimes people will not know, and there's a lot of confusion happening among the leaderships, among governments, among individuals. What is this sustainability is all about, and where that saving needs to come. I think the small steps will take big leaps, and it's compounding. So organizations needs to take small steps without just trying to make significance. And some of the changes which is happening now, even oil and gas companies can start, I mean, they are already start investing on renewable energy implementations and sources and etc. And governments can reroute some of the budgetary requirements for sustainability initiations, grants, green financing. All those things can make initiations, because that capital expenditure is much more less than when you have to deal with climate emergencies. That will become far significant, and rebuilding new structures around it is going to be much more costly. So that will lead into final conversation on the episode 3. Thank you very much, Doctor. We are looking forward to hear some of the technology disruptions, social and well as geopolitical elements, how we can bring together to make this a success. We are not just going to talk about the problems that we have in hand. We are not just blaming anyone for the problems which was been already in existence, but we're trying to see how we can all work together, provide necessary information and find solutions through AI, and also how we can help these organizations to make that change and become much more profitable, and also to become more sustainable in their endeavors. So that's what we wanted to achieve out of this. That's our objective. And
Correct.
once again, Doctor, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you once again on the episode 4.
Thank you very much, Dishana.